The mining colonies of Proxima Centauri B glowed with artificial light against the red-tinted sky. Lieutenant Mason Harper stood at the edge of the patrol zone looking out at the rocky landscape. His breath made small clouds inside his helmet as he scanned the horizon for anything unusual. Mason was not supposed to be this far from the main colony. The patrol route clearly marked on his nav system ended 2 kilometers back, but something had caught his attention. A small flicker of blue light, coming from a ridge that according to his maps should have nothing on it. 3 years on this mining planet had taught Mason to trust his instincts. He adjusted his oxygen levels and moved toward the strange light, careful to keep his boots from sliding on the loose gravel. As he came closer to the ridge, Mason saw what looked like a ventilation shaft built into the rock face. This was odd. No official structures were marked in this area. He checked his comm unit. No signals. No chatter. Nothing to indicate anyone was out here with him. Mason knelt down and examined the shaft. The metal was new, not weathered by the harsh Proxima winds. This was recent construction. He pulled out his scanner and ran it over the area. The readings showed a large space beneath the ridge. A facility of some kind hidden from the official colony maps. Mason knew he should report this back to command, but something made him hesitate. Instead, he found the access panel and, using his security override code, opened the outer door. A rush of processed air greeted him. Mason stepped inside, finding a narrow corridor lit with dim blue lights that led deeper underground. The facility was cold. Clinical white walls and metal floors. Mason moved quietly, passing empty rooms with strange equipment. Inside his helmet, Mason frowned. This looked like a research facility, but none of the proper markings or authorization codes were displayed anywhere. Then he heard it. A soft sound, like someone crying. Mason followed the sound down a side corridor until he reached a door marked only with a symbol he did not recognize. He placed his hand on the security panel, surprised when it opened without resistance. The room beyond was small, a cell with a single bed and no windows. On the bed sat a woman. At least Mason thought she was a woman. She looked almost human except for her ears, which came to delicate points. Her skin had a faint glow to it like moonlight on water. Her hair was white with strands that seemed to shift color as she moved. Her eyes, when she looked up at him, changed from emerald to silver. Mason stood frozen. The alien woman was clearly a prisoner. She wore a simple white garment. Her wrists bore marks from restraints. At her feet curled a small reptilian creature, no bigger than a house cat. Its scales shimmered with iridescent blues and purples. The woman spoke, her voice like music. Mason did not understand the words, but he felt a strange sensation in his mind, images and emotions that were not his own. He realized with a start she was communicating directly into his thoughts. Fear, pain, captivity tests. Pain. More tests. A desperate plea for help. Mason made his decision in that moment. He was not supposed to be here. He had no authority, no backup. But he knew what was happening here was wrong. He had heard rumors of black site research facilities using non-human species for experiments. This had to be one of them. He removed his helmet and spoke to her slowly. "I will help you." The alien woman tilted her head, her eyes changing to a deep blue. She pointed to the small creature at her feet, making gestures that Mason understood. She would not leave without her. Pet Mason nodded. He moved to the security terminal in the corner of the room. Using his military codes, he accessed the system. Finding the cell controls was easy. Disabling them without triggering alarms was harder. But Mason had always been good with systems. Alarms would sound in 15 minutes. That was all the time they had. The alien woman stood as the restraining field around her cell disappeared. She gathered the small reptilian creature in her arms. The creature made a soft trilling sound and nuzzled against her. Mason led them through the corridors, moving as quickly and quietly as possible. They encountered no one. The facility seemed to run on minimal staff. He wondered who had authorized this place, who knew about it. They reached the surface just as the first alert sounded in the distance. Mason guided the woman toward his patrol vehicle. She moved with strange grace despite her obvious weakness. Inside the vehicle, Mason activated the engine. The small reptilian creature watched him with intelligent eyes that seemed too aware, too knowing for a simple pet. Mason drove fast away from the ridge, away from the main colony, his mind racing with what to do next. He could not take her to the colony. They would just lock her up again. The only option was the transport hub, 200 kilometers north, where trading vessels came and went. The alien woman placed her hand on his arm, a gentle touch that sent images flowing into his mind. A place called Valoria, hidden beyond stars, human ships could not see. A home she desperately wanted to return to. Mason nodded, in understanding. As they sped across the barren landscape, he spoke to her, telling her his plan. The transport hub trade vessels that moved beyond regulated space. She might find passage there. They had traveled halfway to the hub when Mason spotted the pursuit vehicle's colony security guards from the facility. They must have tracked his patrol car. Mason pushed the engine harder, the vehicle roaring across the rocky ground. The alien woman clutched her pet closer, the small creature making strange sounds that seemed almost like words. Then Mason saw the checkpoint ahead, a standard security post blocking the road to the hub. 4 guards, armed transport, impossible. He slowed the vehicle, his mind searching for options. The alien woman touched his arm again, her eyes now of fierce gold. She looked at her pet and spoke words Mason did not understand. The small reptilian creature leapt from her arms onto the floor of the vehicle. Then something impossible happened. The creature began to grow scales, spreading limbs extending. A creature that had been the size of a cat was now as large as a wolf, then larger still. Mason watched in shock as the creature transformed into something from ancient Earth myths. A dragon wing spreading wide from its back, eyes glowing with intelligence. It was the size of a small shuttle, now barely fitting in the back of the patrol car. The alien woman opened the rear door. The dragon creature burst out with a screech that echoed across the landscape. It launched into the air wings, creating powerful gusts of wind. The guards at the checkpoint looked up in terror as the dragon creature swooped down toward them. They scattered firing weapons that seemed to have no effect. Mason seized the opportunity. He accelerated, past the checkpoint. The alien woman watching as her pet dragon created chaos behind them. They reached the transport hub as night fell. The place was busy with workers and traders, loading and unloading cargo. Mason guided the alien woman through back alleys, avoiding security cameras. At the far end of the hub, a trading vessel was preparing for departure. Mason recognized the captain, Vera Lynn, a smuggler who asked no questions for the right price. Mason approached her, offering his service weapon as payment. Vera looked at the alien woman with curiosity but nodded her agreement. The alien woman could travel with them to the outer systems, beyond colony control. As the alien woman prepared to board the vessel, she turned to Mason, her eyes now a deep violet. She placed her hands on either side of his face. Images flowed into his mind. A promise, a vow. She would remember what he had done. She would return someday. The small dragon creature, now back to its original size, chirped from her shoulder, its eyes fixed on Mason with what seemed like respect. Then she was gone, boarding the vessel with her dragon pet. Mason watched as the ship lifted off, disappearing into the night sky. He knew his career was over, his life on the colony finished, but he felt no regret. Mason Harper turned and walked away as alarms began to sound in the distance. He had done the right thing. That was all that mattered. The diplomatic chamber on Earth Central Station hummed with tension. Mason Harper stood uncomfortably in his new uniform. The hastily created position of human ambassador to the Valorian collective came with formal attire that felt stiff and unfamiliar against his skin. A far cry from his monitor duty jumpsuit, around the large table sat the most powerful humans in the solar system, the Earth Defense Council, military leaders, political representatives, scientific advisors, all watching Mason with expressions ranging from suspicion to outright hostility. How had a disgraced officer become the focal point of the most important first contact in human history? The doors slid open, and everyone rose to their feet as Lysera entered. She wore ceremonial armor today, silver and blue metals that seemed to flow like water with her movements. Her white hair was braided with threads of light. Her eyes, currently a deep royal purple, surveyed the room with calm authority. 2 Valorian guards flanked her, but what made the human delegation step back was the creature that followed. Azarath the dragon moved with surprising grace for his size, his wings folded tight against his scaled body, his long neck allowing his head to remain level with Lysera's shoulder. His eyes intelligent and watchful, Mason bowed slightly, a gesture Lysera had taught him during their brief meeting on her ship. High Sovereign, welcome to Earth. Lysera inclined her head in return. Ambassador Harper, I thank you for arranging this council. Her voice was musical in the air, but Mason felt the familiar touch of her mind against his, a comforting presence among the stress of the situation. Admiral Samantha Pierce, head of Earth Defense, was the first to speak after introductions. High Sovereign Lysera, we appreciate your diplomatic approach, but you must understand our concern. Your fleet arrived without warning. Your vessels possess technology far beyond our own. The people of Earth are frightened. Lysera nodded. I understand your fear. It is natural, but I assure you we come as allies, not conquerors. Had we wished to conquer Earth, we would have done so with ease. The blunt statement caused murmurs around the table. Mason winced at her directness, but Lysera continued, have remained hidden from galactic affairs for many cycles of your sun. Our civilization predates yours by thousands of years. We observe, we learn, we protect from threats you cannot yet comprehend. One such threat approaches your world, lies directly in its path. She gestured, and Azarath stepped forward. The dragon opened his mouth and breathed out not fire, but a cloud of shimmering particles that formed into a 3-dimensional map of the galaxy. Mason watched in amazement as the map zoomed in, showing Earth and surrounding systems. Then a shadow appeared at the edge, moving slowly but steadily toward the solar system. This is the Void. Harbinger Collective. Lysera explained. They exist between dimensions, entities that feed on conscious life, energy. They have hunted sentient species since before Valorians achieved space travel. We have fought them in secret for centuries, but now they have found a way to breach into normal space on a massive scale. Dr. Elise Morgan, chief scientist, leaned forward, studying the projection. This is impossible. According to all known physics, Azarath made a sound almost like laughter. The dragon looked at Dr. Morgan with intelligent eyes. Lysera smiled. The physics you know is but a fraction of universal law. The harbingers exist in spaces between what you can measure. They slip through cracks in reality. They consume everything. Their advanced scouts have already entered your solar system, testing defenses, preparing for the main force. This caused an uproar. Around the table, Admiral Pierce demanded evidence. Security Chief Walsh questioned if this was an elaborate hoax. Political representatives argued over jurisdiction. Mason watched as Lysera remained calm, her posture regal, her patience evident. After the noise subsided, she spoke again. I understand your skepticism. She waved her hand and the map disappeared. Azarath stepping back to her side. I did not expect you to believe merely on my word. That is why I brought this. From a compartment in her armor, she removed a small cube. It appeared to be made of glass or crystal, but it pulsed with inner light. She placed it on the table. This contains data from our encounters with the harbingers, sensor readings, tactical assessments, biological analysis, everything your scientists need to verify my claims. Dr. Morgan reached for the cube, but hesitated, looking to Admiral Pierce for permission. Before anyone could speak, alarms blared throughout the station, red emergency lights flashing. Security Chief Walsh pressed her comm unit, listening to reports. Her face paled. Multiple unknown contacts detected near Neptune orbit, moving fast toward Earth. Non-responsive to communication attempts, Mason looked at Lysera, whose expression remained calm. This is no coincidence. The Harbinger scouts I spoke of, Lysera said they sense our presence. They know we prepare defenses. Admiral Pierce stood your fleet can intercept. Lysera nodded. The Valorian vessels nearest Neptune are already moving to engage, but this is merely the beginning, a test of our resolve. The next hours passed in controlled chaos. The diplomatic meeting transformed into an emergency command center. Reports flowed in from across the solar system. The strange shadow vessels approached human outposts and vessels. Some were destroyed by Valorian interceptors. Others vanished back into what Lysera called void space. By the time the immediate crisis ended, Earth leadership had a new perspective on the situation. The threat was real. The Valorian fleet had protected human settlements and ships. Admiral Pierce looked at Lysera with new respect. Your vessels saved thousands of lives. Today, Lysera nodded. It is what allies do. What do you want from us in return? Political Representative Kim asked. The question everyone was thinking. You didn't come here just to save us. Your civilization has remained hidden for millennia. Why reveal yourselves now? What do you gain? Lysera looked at Mason, then back to the human leaders' survival. The Harbingers grow stronger with each civilization they consume. If Earth falls, Valoria will eventually follow. We need each other. She turned to Mason. You asked why I chose you. Mason Harper. Why I returned for you specifically. The truth is more complex than you. No, Lysera gestured and Azarath moved forward again. The dragon breathed out another cloud of particles, but this time they formed into an image of DNA strands. One clearly human, the other alien, Valorian. But between them, points of light connected. The structure's Valorian records speak of rare humans with latent abilities that mirror our own ancient connections between our species. I sensed this potential in you when you rescued me. Your compassion, your courage. These are valued traits. But what I truly sensed was something deeper. A resonance between your energy signature and Valorian patterns. Mason stared at the floating DNA comparison. What are you saying? You are special? Mason Harper. Lysera said. One of perhaps 1,000 humans, with genetic markers that allow for Valorian bond resonance. This is why I returned for you specifically. You can help bridge our species in ways others cannot. The room fell silent as the implications sank in. What exactly would this alliance entail? Admiral Pierce asked finally. Lysera straightened her posture. Mason noted the shift in her demeanor from diplomatic to commanding. The Valorian Collective offers Earth protection and alliance, but with conditions. Mason Harper will remain official, ambassador to Valoria. He will help integrate human and Valorian forces. We will share limited technology to help Earth defend itself. We will train selected humans with latent abilities. In return, Earth will provide support bases for our fleet and join us in the coming conflict. The human leaders exchanged glances. The terms were generous given Earth's vulnerable position, but suspicion remained. How do we know these harbingers aren't just a convenient story? Security Chief Walsh asked. How do we know you won't simply conquer us once we lower our defenses? Azarath made a low growling sound. The dragon's eyes narrowed at the accusation. Lysera remained calm. I expected such concerns. She turned to Mason Harper. Can explain why such deception would be pointless. All eyes turned to Mason. He cleared his throat, thinking carefully. The Valorian fleet appeared at the edge of our system and stopped. They could have attacked immediately with no warning. Their technology is centuries beyond ours. Their weapons capabilities we can barely comprehend. If conquest was their goal, we would already be conquered. He looked at Lysera, finding courage in her steady gaze. The High Sovereign was captured and experimented on by humans. Yet she returns, offering alliance, not revenge. The Valorians value honor and debt. Their culture is built on it. I witnessed this firsthand. When the High Sovereign makes a promise, it is binding. Admiral Pierce studied Mason carefully. You trust her completely? Mason nodded. I do. After another hour of debate, Earth leadership agreed to a provisional alliance. They had little choice. The demonstration of both Harbinger threat and Valorian power left few alternatives. As the meeting concluded, Mason found himself walking, with Lysara and Azarath toward the docking bay where her shuttle waited. Human security personnel kept a respectful distance. "Why didn't you tell me about this genetic connection earlier?" Mason asked when they were relatively alone. Lysara looked at him, her eyes shifting to a gentle blue. "Would you have believed me? 3 years ago you were a colony lieutenant, I was a prisoner. Now you understand the scale of what we face. Now you can comprehend what I offer." Mason nodded slowly. "What happens next?" Lysara placed her hand on his arm, the familiar mental connection flowing between them. "You will come to the Starweaver, my flagship. You will learn our ways, our technology, our battle strategies. You will help." 3 years passed like a slow dream. Mason Harper stood at his post on Earth Orbital Defense Platform, Watchtower 4. His demotion after the Proxima incident had been swift. Lieutenant Harper was now specialist, Harper assigned to monitor duty, on the least important section of Earth defense. The small monitoring station offered a view of Earth that still took his breath away, blue and green and swirling white clouds. The home he had not seen for 6 years before his reassignment. A beautiful prison. Mason tapped the console, bringing up the patrol schedule. 6 ships making standard sweeps around the outer solar system. The same routine day after day. Nothing ever changed here. That was the point of his punishment. Monotony, the slow crushing of his spirit. He sometimes wondered about the alien woman with the glowing skin and pointed ears. The one who spoke directly into his mind. The one with the pet that could transform into a dragon. He wondered if she had made it home to the place she called Valoria, or if she had been captured again. Or worse, his console beeped, drawing his attention back to the present. An anomaly at the edge of the solar system. Mason frowned and adjusted the sensors. The readings made no sense. Multiple objects, approaching from the Kuiper belt, moving at impossible speeds. Mason ran a diagnostic thinking it must be a system error. The sensors were old on this station, often glitchy. But the diagnostic showed all systems functioning normally. The objects continued. Their approach. Mason counted 12, no 20, no more, appearing by the second. He hit the alert button connecting to Command Specialist Harper, reporting unusual activity Sector 7, multiple objects approaching from the Kuiper belt at high velocity. Request verification from other stations. The response was immediate, meaning others had seen it too. This was real Watchtower command to all stations. Unknown vessels approaching defensive positions. All personnel to battle stations. This is not a drill. Repeat this. Is not a drill. Mason felt his heart race. This was unprecedented. First contact with Earth had happened decades ago, but all known species approached through designated diplomatic channels, following strict protocols. No one just appeared at the edge of the solar system with a fleet. Around him, the station came alive with activity. Defense personnel running to their positions. Weapon systems powering up, communication channels filling with chatter. Mason stayed at his post, watching the sensor readings. The approaching vessels had slowed now, forming a pattern at the edge of the system. Not advancing further, just waiting. Their technology was unlike anything in human records. No energy signatures that matched known species. No communication methods that Earth systems recognized. The entire Earth Defense Force was now on high alert. Ships moving into defensive formations, weapons ready, politicians and diplomats gathering in emergency sessions. Fear spreading across the planet below. 3 hours into the standoff, Mason received a private alert on his console. A communication request directed specifically to him. Not to command, not to Earth leadership. To Specialist Mason Harper. With shaking hands, he accepted the transmission. A holographic image appeared above his console. It was her, the alien woman he had freed 3 years ago, but transformed. She wore armor that seemed to be made of living metal, shifting and flowing around her form. Her white hair was longer now, adorned with intricate braids woven with gems that caught the light. Her skin still had that faint glow, but now it pulsed with power. Her eyes, when they fixed on him, were a royal purple Mason Harper. Her voice echoed not just in the air but in his mind as well. "You remember me?" Mason nodded, unable to speak. His throat dry with shock. "Yem Lysara High, sovereign of the Valorian collective. I have returned as I promised. I have come for you." Mason found his voice. "Who are you really?" "What is happening?" Lysara smiled, a gentle expression. On her regal face, "I am what I always was, a Valorian. A member of a civilization that has remained hidden from galactic affairs for millennia. We watch. We wait. We protect. I was on a mission to observe humans when I was captured. You showed me compassion when my people could not reach me. For that the collective owes you a debt, and I have come to repay it." Mason looked at the sensor readings showing the massive fleet just beyond Pluto orbit. "Are you invading?" Lysara laughed, the sound like music. "No, Mason Harper. We are offering alliance, but I will speak only with you. You must come to my vessel." Before Mason could respond, alarms blared throughout the station. A single ship had broken formation from the alien fleet and was approaching Earth at incredible speed. Defenses tracked it, weapons locked on. But the vessel moved too fast, seeming to shift in and out of normal space. Mason watched in awe as the ship came to a stop directly above the watchtower station. A perfect position outside weapons, range but close enough to see with the naked eye. Through the viewport, Mason saw it. A vessel like nothing humans had built, organic and mechanical at once. Its surface rippling with colors that seemed alive. His console beeped again. A message from Earth Command Specialist Harper: report to Shuttle Bay immediately. You are being sent to the alien vessel as Earth's representative. God help us all. Mason felt dizzy. This could not be happening. He was a disgraced officer, a monitor technician on the least important station. How was he now suddenly humanity's ambassador to an advanced alien civilization? He made his way to the shuttle bay, his mind racing. Officials were waiting for him, a hastily assembled diplomatic team trying to brief him on protocol. But Mason barely heard them. His thoughts were filled with images of Lysara as she had been a prisoner, a refugee, now returned as royalty. The shuttle journey was short. The alien ship opened something like a docking bay, allowing them entry. Mason alone was permitted to exit the shuttle. The human diplomatic team forced to wait behind. The interior of the vessel was breathtaking. Corridors that seemed grown rather than built. Lighting that came from the walls themselves. The air sweet and clean. Mason followed a path that opened before him, feeling like he was walking in a dream. Then he entered what must be the command center. A vast space with view screens showing Earth and the stars beyond. In the center stood Lysara, even more impressive in person. Her armor gleaming, her presence commanding. Beside her stood a familiar sight that made Mason stop in his tracks. The small reptilian creature he remembered, but no longer small. Now it stood taller than a human, its wings folded against its back. Its intelligent eyes fixed on Mason. "Azurath has grown since you saw him last," Lysara said with affection. "He wishes to thank you for saving us both." The dragon creature. Azurath made a sound like distant thunder and bowed its massive head to Mason. Mason swallowed hard. "Thank you for not eating me back on Proxima." Lysara laughed, the sound echoing around the chamber. Other Valorians in the room, similar to her with pointed ears and glowing skin, looked at Mason with curiosity. "Why have you come?" Lysara Mason asked, finding his courage. "Why now?" After all this time, Lysara's expression grew serious. "I have come because Earth faces extinction. Your planet lies directly in the path of the void, harbingers, ancient enemies that consume. Worlds few know of their existence. We Valorians have fought them in secret for centuries, but now they have found a way to breach into normal space on a massive scale." She gestured, and a holographic image appeared between them, showing creatures of shadow and darkness moving between stars, consuming everything in their path. Mason felt cold fear grip his heart. This is really, Sarah nodded. My capture years ago was no accident. I was investigating human potential as allies when I was taken. Your compassion in freeing me confirmed what I had suspected, that humans, despite your young civilization, possess qualities that make you valuable in the coming war. Mason looked at her in confusion. Why me? Why am I here? You, Mason Harper, will be the bridge. Between our peoples, you will help integrate human and Valorian forces. You will be the ambassador to Valoria. Mason shook his head. I am not qualified. I was demoted. I am nobody. Lysera stepped closer, her eyes shifting to a soft blue. You are the human who saved the High Sovereign of the Valorian Collective. That makes you somebody very important indeed. Before Mason could respond, his comm unit buzzed. Earth Command, demanding answers. Mason looked at the device, then back at Lysera. Your people are afraid, Lysera said. They do not understand our presence. They think we threaten them. You must help them see we offer protection. Mason nodded slowly. Then I need to return to explain. Lysera raised her hand. A gesture of agreement. But know this, Mason. Harper the Void. Harbingers approach faster than we anticipated. You have very little time to convince your leaders. Earth alone cannot stand against what comes. Mason felt the weight of her words, understanding that everything had changed. The universe was larger and more dangerous than humanity had ever imagined, and somehow he stood at the center of it. I will do what I can, he said. Lysera smiled again. That is why I chose you. Mason Harper. That is why I returned. Mason turned to leave, but paused, looking back at the transformed woman and her dragon guardian. Was this your plan all along? When I found you. Lysera shook her head. No. When you found me, I was truly lost, truly afraid. But fate works in strange ways. My capture led me to you. And perhaps that will save us all. Mason nodded and walked back toward the shuttle. Where Earth representatives waited for explanations, he could barely begin to give. He thought of the small, scared alien woman he had rescued on a distant planet. Now returned, as a queen offering salvation. Behind him, he heard the dragon Azarath make a sound almost like human laughter. The Starweaver moved through space like a living thing. Mason Harper stood on the observation deck watching stars blur past. The Valorian flagship was enormous, larger than any human vessel. Its design blending organic curves with crystalline structures that hummed with energy. 2 weeks had passed since Mason left Earth. He still felt overwhelmed by everything he had seen. Technology that seemed magical. Living metals. Weapons that distorted reality. Ships powered by captured stellar energy. A voice spoke behind him. Beautiful, is it not? Mason turned to see Commander Selene Frost approaching. The Valorian officer wore armor similar to Lysera's, but in darker tones. Her skin had the same luminescent quality but with a bluish tint. Her pointed ears, adorned with metal that seemed part of her body. Mason nodded. The view is amazing. Selene stood beside him, her silver eyes watching the stars. I meant the ship. The Starweaver is over 500 of your years old. Yet still, one of our finest vessels. Mason looked around with new appreciation. 500 years. The oldest human ships barely lasted 30. You adapt well to our ways, Selene said. For a human, Mason had learned this was high praise from Selene. The commander served as Lysera's chief strategist. She had been skeptical of bringing humans into their alliance. But over the past weeks, they had developed a working relationship. Today, we begin integration exercises with the human forces. Selene continued. The Earth vessels have arrived at the rendezvous. Point the High Sovereign wishes you to lead the diplomatic aspects. Mason nodded, trying to hide his nervousness. He had spent days studying Valorian protocols and technology, but explaining it to human military officers would be challenging. They walked together through corridors that seemed to pulse with life. Valorian crew members nodded respectfully as they passed. Mason still found it strange to be treated with such deference. From disgrace to ambassador in mere weeks, the command center of the Starweaver was vast. A circular chamber with view screens showing different sectors of space. Valorian officers worked at stations that seemed grown rather than built. Their armor and the ship itself sometimes appearing to merge as one. Lysera stood in the center of the room, Azarath at her side. The dragon had become a constant companion to Mason, often following him when Lysera was occupied with other matters. Mason ambassador. Lysera greeted him formally, conscious of the other Valorians present. Are you prepared for today? Mason bowed slightly. High Sovereign. I am. Lysera nodded. Good. The human vessels approach. They bring officers and soldiers for the first integration exercises. We must show them enough to gain their trust, while being mindful of security concerns. Mason understood the delicate balance. Earth leadership remained suspicious despite the alliance. The limited technology sharing was carefully negotiated. Enough to help humans fight the coming threat, but not enough to be dangerous if relations soured. The main view screen shifted, showing 5 Earth vessels approaching. The largest was the EDS Horizon, Earth's newest battleship. Though primitive by Valorian standards, it represented the best of human military technology. Admiral Samantha Pierce has command, Mason said, recognizing the lead vessel. She is skeptical but fair. She will listen. Lysera nodded. Then let us begin. The next hours passed in carefully choreographed diplomatic exchanges. Human officers shuttled to the Starweaver, touring selected areas, meeting Valorian counterparts. Mason served as bridge between cultures, explaining, translating concepts that sometimes had no equivalent in human language. Admiral Pierce studied everything with sharp eyes, asking pointed questions about weapons capabilities, defense systems, communication protocols. Mason knew she was assessing not just the technology, but the Valorians themselves, their trustworthiness, their true intentions. By midday ship time, the human and Valorian command groups gathered in what Mason had come to think of as the war room, a large chamber where Azarath could create his tactical projections. The dragon stood beside Lysera as the combined forces assembled. Human officers tried not to stare at the massive creature, but few had seen Azarath up close. His presence was intimidating, his intelligence obvious in his watchful eyes. Lysera addressed the gathering. We face an enemy unlike any you have encountered. The Void. Harbingers exist, partially outside normal space. They can possess technology and in some cases living beings. Their goal is consumption of all conscious energy. Azarath breathed out, creating a shimmering display. The tactical map showed the solar system. Then beyond, at the approaching shadow, the main Harbinger force approaches. Admiral Pierce asked. Not yet. Lysera said. What you see are advanced scouts, the heralds of what comes. The main force gathers strength beyond the heliopause, but it will come. Soon. She gestured, and the map shifted, showing defense positions. We propose a 3-layered defense. Valorian ships will form the outer perimeter. Human vessels supported by our technology will defend Earth directly between them. A minefield of quantum disruptors. Admiral Pierce studied the formation. What are quantum disruptors? Lysera looked to Mason, who had been briefed on the technology. They create localized distortions in space-time. Mason explained. The Harbingers cannot pass through these distortions without becoming fully material, making them vulnerable to conventional weapons. What we offer is this. Lysera continued. Defensive technology, weapons modifications, communication systems that can detect Harbinger approach. 10 of your ships will be upgraded initially, as a test. Then knowledge shared with your engineers. This is generous, Admiral Pierce said cautiously. What do you require in return? Lysera met her gaze directly. Valorian training facilities on Mars and Europa. Your best soldiers and scientists to learn our methods, and most importantly, 50 humans with specific genetic markers for specialized training. The last request caused murmurs among the human officers. Mason had expected this. The genetic connection Lysera had mentioned was still not fully explained. What kind of specialized training? Admiral Pierce asked. Resonance bonding, Lysera said. Those with the correct genetic markers can learn to enhance Valorian defensive barriers that keep harbingers from fully materializing. She turned to Mason. Ambassador Harper possesses such markers. He will be the first to undergo this training. All eyes turned to Mason. He kept his expression neutral, though his mind raced with questions. Lysera had mentioned this connection, but not explained what the training would involve. The meeting continued. Technical details discussed, integration plans formulated by its end. A fragile understanding had been reached. Human and Valorian forces would begin joint operations within days as the human officers prepared to return to their vessels. Mason escorted Admiral Pierce to the shuttle bay. She waited until they were relatively alone before speaking. You trust her completely, don't you? Mason considered his answer. I trust her intentions. Admiral, the Valorians need us as much as we need them. Pierce studied him. Tell me honestly, Harper, did she choose you because you freed her? Or is there more to it? Mason thought of the genetic markers, the resonance Lysera had mentioned. Both, I think. But there is something she hasn't fully explained yet. Something about why I specifically can help. Pierce nodded. Be careful, Ambassador. You walk between worlds now. Earth's security depends on your judgment. She paused. Your loyalty must remain with humanity. Mason met her gaze. My loyalty is to Earth's survival, Admiral. To all our survival. After the human delegation departed, Mason found Lysera in a quiet chamber. She stood before a window, watching the Earth vessels move into formation for the first joint exercises. Azarath curled nearby, his massive form somehow making the large room feel small. You did well today, Mason, Lysera said, using his first name now they were alone. Mason joined her at the window. There was much I didn't understand. Much I couldn't explain. Lysera turned to him, her eyes shifting to that gentle blue that Mason had come to recognize as her most honest expression. They fear what they do not understand. It is natural. Mason nodded. But there is one who fears what I do not understand. What is this? Resonance bonding you mentioned. The genetic connection. How exactly will I help enhance barriers against the harbingers? Lysera was silent for a moment. Then she gestured to Azarath. The dragon uncurled, moving to her side. Among my people there are ancient traditions, Mason, connections between Valorians and other sentient beings. Azarath is a sky dancer, one of the last of his kind. Before most were hunted to extinction by the harbingers, his species bonded with mine long ago, protecting, guiding, sharing power. She placed her hand on Azarath's scaled neck. The dragon hummed a deep resonant sound. What few know is that certain humans share genetic markers with ancient Valorians, a connection lost to time. Perhaps our species crossed paths before, or perhaps it is cosmic coincidence. Either way, those with these markers can form connections similar to our bond with sky dancers. Mason tried to understand. What exactly does that mean? Lysera stepped closer to Mason. Her eyes now glowing softly. Means you can learn to channel Valorian energy, to create barriers the harbingers cannot cross, to amplify our powers in ways even we do not fully understand. She reached out, placing her palm against his chest. You felt it when we first met. The connection. In your mind it was not just telepathy, it was resonance, your energy pattern recognizing mine. Mason remembered the strange sensation when Lysera had first touched his thoughts on Proxima. The feeling that went beyond communication to something deeper. Is this why you really came back for me? Mason asked. Because of this genetic quirk. Lysera smiled, a trace of sadness in her expression. The Valorian resonance training left Mason exhausted. Each session with Lysera pushed his mind and body to limits he never knew existed. For 3 weeks they had worked together in a special chamber deep within the Starweaver, Azarath always present, always watching. Mason sat on the floor of the chamber trying to steady his breathing. His skin tingled with residual energy. Lysera knelt before him, her eyes a calm blue, her hands still glowing faintly from their connection. You are progressing faster than I expected, she said. For a human to channel Valorian energy typically takes months of training. You have achieved basic resonance in weeks. Mason smiled weakly. I had good motivation. The Harbinger attacks were growing more frequent, more bold. The scouts had become advanced forces targeting outposts and smaller vessels throughout the solar system. Is it enough, Mason asked Will, what I can do? Make a difference? Lysera touched his face gently. It already has the resonance field you helped create. Yesterday protected the Mars colony from infiltration. Without it, the Harbingers would have possessed the colonists. Mason nodded, remembering the strange sensation as his mind had connected with Lysera's. Their energy patterns aligning, creating a barrier that forced the Harbinger scouts into physical form, making them vulnerable to conventional weapons. Azarath made a soft rumbling sound from his position nearby. The dragon had become an essential part of their training, his ancient energy somehow amplifying the connection between Mason and Lysera. There is one more technique we must attempt, Lysera said, her tone growing serious. One that carries greater risk but also greater power. Mason met her gaze, waiting for her to continue. Full triad resonance, she explained, connecting not just our minds but Azarath's as well. A threefold bond that can create barriers strong enough to close a Harbinger portal. The dragon lifted his massive head eyes fixed on Mason. Before you decide, Lysera, continued, such a connection leaves lasting changes. Your mind, your energy pattern will be permanently altered. You will never be fully human again. Mason considered this, the implications, the consequences. How altered? Lysera hesitated. Something in her, expression shifting. You will carry part of us with you always. You will see things differently, feel things differently. Your lifespan may extend beyond normal human limits, and you will be forever connected to me, to Azarath. A bond that transcends distance. Mason thought of Earth, of his former life, the lonely monitor technician, the disgraced officer. That person seemed distant now, like someone he had read about rather than been. Will it help stop the Harbingers? Yes, Lysera said, without hesitation. Then, I agree. Lysera nodded, but her eyes showed concern. There is something else you should know. Before we proceed, the full truth of why I sought you specifically. Mason waited, sensing this was important. When a Valorian of royal blood is saved by another, a life debt is created, she began. This is known to my people. But what I have not told you is that such debts can only be repaid in specific ways, according to ancient law. She paused, her eyes now a deep violet, the color Mason had come to associate with her most honest moments. By our traditions, the one who saves a queen eventually stands beside her, not just as an ally, but as her chosen consort. Mason stared at her, the implications slowly sinking in. You mean, the triad resonance, we attempt it, is not merely a military tactic, Mason. It is a bonding ritual, one that has not been performed between a Valorian and human for thousands of years. If successful, it will mark you as my chosen one. In the eyes of my people. Mason felt his heartbeat quicken. Is that what you want? Lysera looked at him directly. Now you understand why I hesitated to explain fully. I did not wish you to think I manipulated you, that I returned only for this. My people need this alliance. Earth needs protection. These truths remain, but yes, the connection I felt with you on Proxima. It was more than gratitude, more than recognizing genetic compatibility. Azurath made a sound almost like laughter. The dragon watching them with knowing eyes. Mason took a deep breath, processing everything. Why tell me this now? Because you deserve to choose with full knowledge, Lysera said. Because what comes next must be entered willingly or not at all. Before Mason could respond, alarms blared throughout the ship. The emergency communication system activated. High Sovereign to command deck immediately. Multiple breaches detected near Mars. Harbinger portal forming. Lysera's expression hardened. It has begun sooner than we anticipated. The main force approaches. They rushed to the command deck, finding chaos. Tactical displays showed a massive distortion forming in space near Mars. Shadow vessels, pouring through by the dozens, human and Valorian ships already moving to intercept. Admiral Pierce's face appeared on the main screen. Massive enemy force detected. requesting immediate Valorian support. This is not a scout force, High Sovereign. This is invasion. Lysara nodded grimly. All vessels to battle stations. Activate the quantum disruptor field. Signal Earth defense. Fleet to fall back to secondary positions. The portal must be contained. Mason watched as the combined fleets engaged the Harbinger forces. The battle was unlike anything he had witnessed. Shadow vessels shifting between states, weapons passing through, them without effect except where Valorian technology had been implemented. Celine Frost approached urgency in her voice. The portal expands. High Sovereign. Our containment measures fail. The Harbingers adapt to our defenses. Lysara turned to Mason, her expression grave. We have no choice. The Triad resonance. It is our only hope to close the breach, Mason. Nodded, understanding what she proposed. They would attempt untested techniques in the midst of battle. Risking everything, Azurath moved to them, the dragon somehow sensing their intent. Lysara addressed Celine. Take command of the fleet. Keep the Harbingers occupied as long as possible. We will attempt to close the portal from the command shuttle. Celine looked concerned, but nodded. The High Sovereign. Minutes later, Mason found himself aboard a small but powerful Valorian vessel, Lysara, piloting them toward the expanding portal Azurath, somehow fitting his massive form in the rear compartment. The dragon's wings folded tight against his body. Through the viewport, Mason saw the battle raging. Human ships firing modified weapons, destroying some shadow vessels. Valorian ships moving with impossible grace, their energy weapons more effective. But the Harbinger forces kept coming. More and more pouring through the widening breach. The shuttle moved past the defensive lines, heading directly toward the portal. Lysara guiding them with skill that spoke of centuries of experience. We must get closer, she explained. To affect the portal, directly we need proximity. Mason felt fear but pushed it aside, focusing on what he had learned in their training sessions. The resonance, the connection, the energy that flowed between them. The shuttle stopped, at what Lysara deemed the optimal distance, close enough to reach the portal with their combined power, far enough to have escape potential. Now, she said, we have one chance in the rear of the shuttle. Azurath unfurled his wings as much as the space allowed, his eyes glowing with ancient power. The dragon began to hum a sound that vibrated through Mason's bones. Lysara moved to stand before Mason, her armor dissolving, revealing the simple white garments beneath her eyes, shifting through colors before settling on a brilliant gold he had never seen before. This is who I truly am, Mason Harper, she said, the last of the elder Valorian line, the keeper of ancient ways. What we attempt has not been done in 10,000 years. She held out her hands. Mason took them without hesitation, their fingers intertwining, energy immediately beginning to flow between them. Remember what I taught you, Lysara whispered. Open your mind completely. Hold nothing back. Mason closed his eyes, focusing on the techniques they had practiced, imagining his consciousness as a vessel emptying of self-filling with shared energy. The connection formed faster than ever before, Lysara's presence flowing into his mind, her thoughts, her memories, her essence becoming accessible to him, as his became to her, a sharing so complete that for a moment Mason forgot where he ended and she began. Then Azurath joined them, the dragon's consciousness vastly different, ancient, primal, yet somehow familiar. The triad connection completed like the closing of a circuit, energy surging through, all three of them. Mason gasped as power unlike anything he had experienced flooded through him, his awareness expanding beyond the shuttle, beyond normal perception. He could see the portal now, not just visually, but energetically, a tear in the fabric of reality. A wound in space-time through which the Harbingers poured. Together the three of them focused their combined consciousness on the breach. The resonance field expanding from the shuttle like a wave of pure energy. Mason felt Lysara's guidance in his mind. See the patterns that hold reality together. Feel how they should be. He saw it then. The proper configuration. The way space-time should flow. The portal was an aberration. A forced opening that violated natural law. Their combined energy reached the portal edges, the resonance field interacting with the breach. Mason felt incredible resistance, the harbingers fighting to maintain their passage, a pressure against his mind that threatened to crush his consciousness. More came Lyceris, voice in his mind not spoken but felt. We need more power. Mason pushed beyond what he thought possible, drawing on reserves he never knew existed, giving everything to the connection. Azarath roared, the sound both physical and mental, the dragon channeling ancient power into their triad bond. The shuttle began to shake, warning lights flashing, systems overloading from the energy they were generating. Mason felt something,